Старался к этому подходить не...
I tried to keep my emotions in check. People's support is something that gave me a sense of positivity and strength. And not just me, but also people who are still sitting there in prison because of their principles. Nonetheless, and maybe more importantly, the position of the state also matters. We consider ourselves Ukrainian citizens. How the state and society react to this is in the foreground. We've seen the statements Ukraine has made, and its support is something very close to our hearts for our compatriots, Ukrainian citizens living in Crimea.
The conditions that they detain people in at the Simferopol detention facility leave much to be desired, to say the least. Moreover, you were there 24/7. They didn't even take you to the court hearings. You appeared via video link.
Yes, I only ever moved from one cell to another.
In fact, all your communication with the outside world happened via lawyers and your wife, who was a representative of your defense, right? Why do you think they stopped taking you to the court?
Technically, it looked like this. Chiygoz is taken to the court, hundreds of people gather, and as a result, it's not just Chiygoz in opposition, but the whole society. Despite the obstacles, searches, security barriers, metal detectors, rude behaviors, small rooms with enough space only for 5 or 6 people, people have overcome that and fought against that. They had to close the streets, put hundreds of special forces there. At first, when my case was heard, together with my brothers Ali and Mustafa, it had a major resonance and they had some trouble. When they sent the case for further investigation, they decided to divide it, and I was told that, in general, it was the first time the court of first instance conducted hearings via video since the adoption of this law in Russia.
Ali Asanov, Mustafa Degermenci and other people involved in the so-called February 26th case received a proposal to give evidence against you in exchange for freedom. I assume that you also received this proposal.
Of course, before the arrest, they were saying that the level of trust for me and my reputation among my compatriots is impressive, especially after the deportation of Mustafa Jamilyev and Rifat Chubarov. But in general, they failed. They understood that all their efforts to make me switch to their side were in vain. And then as a result, they understood that it would be a real problem. Any kind of communication with me, even a dialogue, was a big problem for them.
Through whom did they try and reach you?
When I was put in the detention facility, they tried to reach me through different people. Investigators, a special group was working on my case. They were trying to reach me through the Federal Security Service employees. The proposals I received, they're awful because they are not about me personally, but about the nation. You have to play a rotten trick on your people, on your state. I knew some people who signed such documents, but the illusion of freedom turned into shame for them. Probably it's possible to live with it, if they do manage to live, but you definitely lose your dignity. One moment it will become absolutely clear. These proposals caused me no emotions at all. I just denied them. In this case, regarding Mustafa and Ali, to partly admit guilt is one thing, but to accept the accusation in this way is shameful, a betrayal of the people. There's a whole list of surnames, so they did not do that. And when, in the presence of the investigator, the so-called mufti, the highest religious rank, suggested that we commit a sin against our countrymen and fellow Muslims, they said, "How can you ask us to do such a thing? We will not sign it."
I would like to clarify, are you talking about Simferopol Mufti Emirol Ablayev?
Yes, and he says, he, Akhtem Chiygoz, will be imprisoned anyway. He will be sent to jail. There is a need to save you.
What exactly did they want from you? To recognize the authority of the pro-Kremlin Crimean leader, Sergei Aksyonov, and the Kremlin in Crimea on behalf of the Mejlis.
Who is Aksyonov? Why should I recognize him? We weren't speaking about puppets. Those who spoke to me represented the central authority of the Russian Federation. They didn't speak about the puppets either. We were talking about basic things, the self-determination of people in such conditions, the call for participation in elections, for example. Again, I had a conversation prior to my imprisonment. One man insisted that I must recognize the authority of Russia, and I said, if Russia needs to be recognized by Chiygoz, what kind of country is that? That's it. Some things were so absurd that I even had no desire to discuss them. Both my people and I understood that this is a crime against the people. They, the Russian military, repeatedly emphasized that, according to prison standards, I am old, that at such an age it turns into an issue of survival. They told me to think about my children, my wife, my grandchildren. They asked if I needed all this trouble.
What was your reaction when you were taken to a meeting with the Ukrainian ombudsman Lutkovska?
When they arrived, the room was small, and there were a lot of policemen, 4 generals, prosecutors, people from the Federal Service for the Execution of Sentences in Russia, and Human Rights Commissioner Tatiana Moskolkova with Ukrainian Ombudsman Valeria Lutkovska. There is such an atmosphere now in Crimea that you go into a deep depression, and when Lutkovska asked how I felt, I said that we wouldn't talk about that. I wanted her to convey to the people of Ukraine that I looked into the faces of the generals and said that I wouldn't get on my knees, that I wasn't afraid of them, and I saw that Lutkovska shared my position. And after that, I generally asked them to get out, and the generals turned and silently walked out. Moskolkova and Lutkovska, my lawyer, my wife, and I remained. Moskolkova asked if she could stay. I said, well, you're a woman, of course, of course.
A couple of days ago, you finally met your father in Kyiv. What were the first words you said to one another?
It's a pity that my mother isn't with us, that she didn't live to see this day. The path of every person in this world, their actions are assessed by society. I was calm when I knew that thousands of my compatriots were at my mother's funeral and said that they were all her children.
Judging by the official document you showed at the airport, you were supposedly accompanied back home. However, in reality, you were brought to Ankara. What are your further plans?
I understand that my position on the issue of citizenship, my adherence to principles, is the price for my deportation. But I'm not going to try to conduct any kind of activity that could be described as rallies. No, I'll just go home. We are brought up in such a way. Let it be a long way off, for me in particular, but I'll go home. And I'm sure I'll get home, whatever is waiting for me there, but we will be there, no matter what.
Пусть наш путь будет долгий, в частности мой, но я домой пойду.